Hey everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode 34 in the podcast series, coming to you live straight from Berlin, Germany, where I have been at a conference for the last few days. I've also been on a yarn tour a little bit before and after the conference, so this episode is your Berlin yarn tour, which I hope you'll enjoy. I am in my hotel room at the moment. I promise I'm not sitting in the lobby of the place, and I thought I'd show you one of the weirder features of the room, which is this thing behind me, which turns this whole thing into a kind of like fireside chat, if you will, from time to time. So the strange part about this, the strange part is that there are a lot of places in Germany where I've been finding TVs on in lobbies with a fire going in the background. Maybe it's because it's winter. I don't really know. But this one turns on automatically, so sometimes I'll come back from the conference, and even if I've turned it off during the during the day, it's back on and it's running its script, and it's a little bit weird. So yeah, I think I'll turn it off because it's a little distracting. But anyway, fireside chats. So I think I'm going to do a quick swap to another wall where there's not a grand screen behind me. Okay, mischief managed. This might be a little bit more of a subdued place to have our little podcasting session. So let me do a little introducing. I am knitting the stash just about everywhere, on YouTube obviously, on Ravelry, on Instagram, and on the blog, which is knittingthestash.wordpress.com. So please come visit me there. It's lovely to see all of you who have been with me for a while, and it's always lovely to welcome new folks to the podcast, so welcome. And I would normally be coming to you from Urbana, Illinois, where I'm a professor at the university there, and I'd usually be coming to you from my yarn room, but I've created a kind of yarn room of my own in this hotel based on my yarn tour, so I'm going to tell you all about that today. I have an FO, believe it or not, and I have a whip, and I don't have half the stuff I normally have for a podcast, so that'll just have to wait until next week, but you guys are all down for that, I'm sure, and are you ready to hear about Berlin? So I'm going to jump right in. What I have as a finished object for you is my travel knitting. And when I travel, planes and trains and other things, sometimes you can only bring certain kinds of needles. And if you're flying out of the United States, usually I always just bring wooden needles because I think it's just the safest bet. You're not going to get pulled aside with wooden needles, or I haven't at least. And so I usually bring my Addies with me. The nice thing about these is that when I travel, I can pop off the ends, and I put these just right in with my pencils and pens in my backpack, and it just seems to work really well. I don't know if that's all that necessary, but it's just like my own little precautionary thing. Like, they look much more like pencils when they're with pencils, so that's what I do. And then the Addies, it's cool because you got this long cord and you can just keep whatever you're working on the cord, and that's usually cool. And I like to have a project that I have brought sweaters with me before. And in fact, my colorwork sweater, my Iba pullover, I did bring that on a plane, and I ended up tinking back like 5 or 6 rows on that one on one flight before I kind of finished off the main torso portion of the sweater. Oh, that was good and bad. I've brought hats with me. I've brought mittens and socks. Usually, for a long time I was a sock knitter in airports because I would just use wooden DPNs. But this time around, I decided to do a kind of old trusty and do a Linus shawl because for a bunch of different reasons. Number one, Linus shawls are great because they're just triangular shawls, really chill, and they help me and you maybe use up yarn from your stash that's kind of like a variegated yarn or a yarn that you're not quite sure what to do with. I find that one skein of cool yarn can make a really great Linus shawl, and I've actually been wearing the Linus shawl that I made out of my hand spun that I talked about a few episodes back all over Germany, and that's been really great. It's been warm and woolly, and it kind of happens to go with this teal sweater I have, which is kind of bizarre, but unplanned and awesome. So I grabbed a skein of Brook Farms, which Lisa is a proprietor of Brook Farms, and this is one of her skeins. She raises her own sheep and different breeds of sheep and dyes the yarn. Brook Farm, really cool lady. And I actually acquired a bunch of her yarn because in a Facebook group I was in, I still am in, she put up a big lot of kind of like the yarn that she had used for dyeing for education. Like she would run classes on dyeing or showing different techniques at various festivals and things. And so she had a lot of yarn kind of left over from those dye experiments. And I bought the whole lot of that and a whole lot of her natural yarns that are breed specific. So this beautiful, it's not a skein of yarn anymore, it's a shawl, but this beautiful skein is a Finn skein. And one of the other cool things or reasons that I wanted to do this is because in my guild study group right now, we're working on Finn sheep. And so it's fun to kind of see a 2-ply Finn in real life, all spun up and ready to go, and to work it up into a shawl. The third millionth reason why I was making this shawl is that my grandmother's 91st birthday was a few days ago. And she's always admired my knitting from afar, and I actually just sent her a copy of my book, and I thought, you know, what would be a nice little birthday present would be a shawl. And she and my aunt lived together in West Virginia, so I thought, well, if I'm going to send Grandma a shawl, I need to send a little something for Cheryl too. So this one will be for Cheryl, and I know, excuse my ends, I didn't have a tapestry needle until today, so you can see I've got a few danglers there, but I've got a tapestry needle now, and it's a really cool tapestry needle set, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So that's my finished object, and it's just a plain Linus shawl, and if you haven't heard about the Linus pattern, you should totally go check it out. It's an Annette Cordis, is that her? I'll put her name on the bottom of the screen, like I usually do, and in the show notes. Really simple triangular shawl. You start with a few stitches on one end, you work up with yarn overs and reductions on one side, and then you're adding an increase on that one side at the same time. So it gets bigger and bigger and wider. So this is the start over here with just a few rows going on, just a few stitches, and then it gets really wide down here at the bottom. And it's cool because it shows off, because of the way that the increases and everything, it shows off a nice variegated yarn like this with kind of pooling, etc. So check out the Linus shawl. And because I only brought size 4 needles and I brought an extra skein of yarn, this is another Linus shawl, and this one will be for my grandma. This is knit in a Drops Delight print. It's a superwash treated sock wool that's a single, so I would never use it for socks, but as a shawl it's going to be beautiful. My favorite colors of purple, and it is knitting up really well. It actually came from Albina of LB Hand Knits when we did our yarn exchange. I sent her some US yarn and she sent me some cool Irish wool and some other things, and this was among the things. So I love the way it's knitting up. It's kind of like a gradient-ish kind of thing where it keeps changing color as I go. So I think this one will be beautiful. I'll finish it on the play of a plane ride and a bus ride and everything else ride tomorrow. So that'll be done by the time I get home. So the way I figure it, that's 2 skeins of yarn, right? I mean, not that we're looking for like net loss or gain as our real reason for buying or not buying yarn, but I'm in the positive here. I've got 2 skeins that I've turned into objects that are going to be sent off to people that I love, and so it's even better. It's like yarn knit into things and sent out of the house. So I was feeling pretty net positive on the whole thing. But I was also feeling a little bit like I just missed the Edinburgh Yarn Festival by 1 weekend flying out here. So I arrived in Berlin on Tuesday afternoon, and the Edinburgh Yarn Festival was the previous like Friday, Saturday weekend. So had I planned a little bit better, I probably could have hit Edinburgh and then come to Berlin for the conference and done the Berlin Yarn Tour, but alas, there's just been too much going on for that kind of planning, I suppose. So it is what it is, and what I decided to do while I was here is do my own yarn tour. And it's kind of auspicious in many ways. You guys know, I think, that one of the best things I love to do when I'm traveling is find the yarn shops and go to them, because it's a cool excuse to actually talk to local folks. it's a great way to get to know a city, because yarn shops can be scattered all over. And in Berlin, there are a million yarn shops, well, 4 that I went to specifically. And you get to see different parts of the city, meet people, see what's going on at kind of local level in different neighborhoods. And usually there's a cupcake shop nearby, which was the case on Wednesday and today. So I found some awesome vegan cupcakes. I thought that was pretty cool too. But Berlin Knits just had the other thing I missed. You pretty much miss everything. If you're in the United States, you miss the European stuff, and if you're in Europe, you miss the United States stuff. So when I talk to folks in Europe, they're like Rhinebeck, or Wisconsin, or the great, isn't it? It's like the Black Sheep event in Oregon. Anyway, we're always missing out on each other's things. So the Berlin Knits of 2017 was doing a Berlin yarn tour kind of a thing, and I managed to visit one of the yarn shops that was involved in this Yarn Over Berlin, and kind of sponsoring this yarn tour. And so it was fun to go check that out, and I did my own yarn tour. It was almost like I rented my own bus and set out on my own across the city. It wasn't quite like that, but there were some pretty awesome things about it. So I don't usually do like show and tell, but I'm going to do a little show and tell today because it's kind of fun to think about. There were 4 yarn shops in Berlin that I really wanted to check out. I'm going to mispronounce all the names, and you guys are just going to have to live with it. Sorry about that. I will show business cards whenever I can, so that way, and put everything in the show notes, so that way it's at least, you can look it up by yourself even if you can't understand what I'm trying to say. So the first one I visited was Die Wullerin, and this one is kind of in a little bit of the southwest part of the city. It's run by Sabine Banamine, and it's kind of south of the Tiergarten, if you guys are familiar with that part of Berlin. And I took a nice walk down there. It was about an hour walk from my hotel down there, and I fell in love with the shop. And I'm going to insert a photo here of a couple of the places in the shop. One of the reasons I was interested in going to this particular yarn shop is because Sabine has her own line of dyed wool, and she has a bunch of different bases, as it turns out. I found that out when I got down there. And I'll put a picture in here of the wall of her yarn, which the bases were incredible. She had things all the way from breed-specific yarn like Wensleydale and Falkland Merino, all the way to, sock, like superwash sock wool or yarn, to kind of yak silk merino combos. Like, she had the full gamut. There was alpaca. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful wall of yarn, all different colors and flavors. And the one thing I'm not collecting right now, if I can help it, is variegated yarn. So I thought to myself, remember that you have a tub at home full of it. Just remember that. So I didn't buy any of her yarn, but I did see, I guess there's a spinning group that meets at that yarn shop. I don't know if it's once a month or so, but she had not only fiber, but she had spindles. And you guys know, some of you who have been watching for a while know that I've been looking for a really awesome drop spindle for a long time. And I have a Turkish spindle that someone sent me, which is really lovely, and I've been using it, and I think it's a wonderful, wonderful spindle. But I've been looking for a 20-gram one that's kind of small and light and pretty, in part because Debbie had one, and I loved using Debbie's, and I think that's kind of like the ultimate spindle weight for the kind of yarn I like to make when I'm hand spinning. So this is what I found. A tiny little 20-gram beauty, and I think you can see it there. Yes. I'm obviously not on my normal camera today, so I'm like working with a computer, and I'm a little bit like, it's like I've lost all depth perception, so I'm going to try my best to get this to work. So this is the spindle, and she explained to me that there were 2 makers of these spindles in Germany. This one is, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but what I will do is put all the information in the show notes, and I'll show you, for those of you who do speak German or read German, you'll be able to see this. She told me that it's made out of mahogany, bubinga wood, and then almond wood. the different parts of the spindle. And I think you'll be able to see the design here and here. It's got a cool little stamp down at the, telling you, I'm like right, left, I'm all reversed. It's got a cool little stamp over here. But the main thing about this is that it's 20 grams. So it'll be light enough to not pull the fiber out of my hand when I go to spin it. Unfortunately, there was no fiber to be found. Practice fiber, that is. So I have to wait till I get home to try it out, but I'm super excited about that one. The other knit shop that I visited, one or the other, I also visited Knit Berlin, which had a lot of Wool People yarn and a couple other kind of more mainstream brands. It didn't have as much variety as the other 3 shops that I was at, so I won't talk about them as much, but it was a cool little shop. So then the third shop I went to was Yarnoverberlin, and she sent me home, shall I say, with this cool tote bag from the event that happened just a few months ago in 2017. And in part, I think she did that because the one souvenir skein of yarn that I bought that was a superwash is this really, I think it's really pretty skein from La Bien-Amie. And when I was in France, I visited her shop. There it is. I visited her shop and talked to her, and I have one other skein of La Bien-Amie at home, and it's like one of my prized possessions, and I don't know that I could ever knit with it. It's in a beautiful kind of purple variegated colorway, and I've been trying to bring myself to use it for some kind of something, but I haven't gotten up the nerve yet. So I was kind of excited to see La Bien-Amie here. And this colorway is Paris in Berlin for Berlin Knits 2017. And so I think that's why she was just like, yes, you should totally do this. And she gave me the, as I said, the little program. And the program includes this pattern, which is for the Paris in Berlin. I think it's a shawl by Kohi Locatelli. And so that was pretty sweet, and she was really great. I told her that I run this podcast, and I took a picture of her shop, which I'll put in here. I was sharing it on Instagram a few days ago, and she was really fun and lovely, and she had a group of women in there, and they were all chatting and having a great time talking about yarn in German, and I could not understand a word they were saying, but it was really, well, I could pick out a few, every once in a while there'd be a yarn over or some technical term that was fun to hear. But she was really cool and very welcoming, as were all of these yarn shop ladies, so I would totally recommend Berlin as the place to go if you want to do a yarn tour, or one of the good places to go. While I was there, I also saw that they had tuku wool, which is the Finnish wool, and I think Wool and Honey has been stocking this, because I know I have 2 other mini skeins like this at home in 2 different colors. So I got a kind of gray, like a neutral gray, thinking I would use this for some color work with the other skeins of yarn. But I did see that they had tuku wool sock yarn, as well as the fingering. So I don't think the sock yarns made it to the US yet via Wool and Honey or the Woolly Thistle. And those are 2 great yarn shops that you can shop online, and they import a lot of yarn from Europe and the UK. And I would highly recommend them. Okay, so the last yarn shop I visited was Woolen in Berlin, and it is over in Friedrichstein. I really should learn to speak German, because I really never planned on being in Germany all that often, but I've been here quite a bit for work. Lots and lots of conferences are happening here, especially in history of science and science technology studies. I should learn to speak German, not just French, because I've been to France like once, Anyway, so this other yarn shop, Woolen in Friedrichstein. I'm going to do it with a French accent, it's just not right. So Friedrichstein was a really interesting place to visit. It was very different than central Berlin, and I thought it was really cool, like just to see a transitional area like that that's kind of filling up with vegan restaurants and cupcake shops and wool like knitting shops and art stuff going on there. I mean, it seemed like every other person had a guitar on their back. There was a skateboard shop in the main street, like really funky area, and this particular yarn shop fit in perfectly there. And it wasn't just the yarn shop. When I posted on Instagram that I was going to be in Berlin, Stephanie, who lives here, got in touch with me, and I said, well, I'll be at Woolen on Saturday if you want to meet me there. And she came, and it was so lovely. We ended up spending a couple of hours together there. And she was like my local tour guide to the massive amount of yarn that is in that shop, like from all over the world. So if you are in Berlin and you're looking for a shop that really houses a lot of cool yarn from everywhere, and I'll show you a little bit of some of the different stuff in a minute. You know, we've got Denmark represented, we've got Argentina, we've got Portugal, let's see, Lithuania. The United States was represented by Brooklyn Tweed and Juniper Moon Farms. So anyway, wool from around the world was really, really neat to see. And Stephanie was an excellent host and tour guide, and she is, it's kind of her local yarn shop, so she knew the folks who were there and knew the yarn really well, and she goes to knit night there, so it was pretty awesome. And I'm going to put a little picture in here of Stephanie. I said, Stephanie, we have to get a selfie in the yarn shop together because this is too cool. Like, she watches the podcast, like we met on Instagram, and then to meet her in person. I love these meetups. I think they're really, really fun. So thank you, Stephanie, for coming all the way out and showing me around your local yarn store. That was a really cool experience. So let me show you just a couple of the things that we found there. One of them is this really neat linen from Lithuania, which the thing about traveling in Europe and the UK, even if we have excellent yarn shops in the US, such as the Woolly Thistle and Wool and Honey, where you know, yarn is being imported, and the women who are running those shops are really actively importing some cool yarn, lots of British breed-specific wool, things from Denmark, things from Finland. You know, they've got their feelers out and they're figuring out what's cool. But to visit a shop like this one in Berlin just really allows you to see even more of the world through yarn, which I think is an excellent way to see the world. So this is some linen, and I will say Stephanie and I took a long time picking out the color for the shawl I was going to make. This is a 100% Lithuanian linen, and there were little knit swatches samples kind of laid out on the counter underneath this huge display, which I'll put a few pictures in here. And it was really hard to choose a color because, as you guys know, if you're looking at silk or linen or any of the long wools, the luster of the wool and the way that it takes dyes, any of those, is just, it's like incredible. And so the colors are just to die for. And I really would have picked like one of every color, but Stephanie she was a yarn enabler, but she was also like very even-handed and even-minded about the whole process. So we settled on this color, which is purple, but it's not a real like super crazy purple. It's like a nice purple, and I think it'll go well for a kind of shawl. And she suggested I hold the yarn double, so that's why I got two of them. They're about 250 meters or so each for 50 grams. And I'm going to knit something up beautiful with those, I think. Some of the other yarn I picked up there is from, this stuff is from Argentina, and it's a Simula melange, and I think you can try to switch it on so you can see the colors. They're kind of blowing out the screen a little bit. It's a really beautiful blue and a kind of creamy oatmeal, and I thought I'd use these for some kind of hat or gloves. I have another kind of pair that's similar in color, so I might make a hat out of one of them and some mittens out of the other. The neat thing about this is that it's 100% organic wool, and this particular company, which is based in Denmark, has a bunch of different kinds of yarn that they've been putting out. So this is a mélange, which is, I assume, just exactly as it sounds. Like, it's just a mix of wool, and you know, just a kind of wool blend. But they also had a Shetland, they had an alpaca, they had a nice cotton wool blend, and I think they had some other linen from Denmark, I think. can't be positive. I didn't pick up a skein of everything. So, I mean, I picked it up and I touched it and I thought about it and I held it for a long time, but I didn't bring everything home with me. But that's a company to watch out for. This is the BC Garn, BCGARN yarns. And I haven't seen them available in the US, so I kind of want to check them out. They, as far as I can tell, it's a woolen spun yarn, 2-ply, and like I said, this is 100% wool blend, and I'm really looking forward to trying it out. Stephanie said she's knit up, I think she said she knit up some mittens with it, and it turned out she really liked it, so that was cool. And then, of course, we found this beautiful skein, and this is Mondim, M-O-N-D-I-M is the company, and look at that adorable logo. And this wool is, this is 100% Portuguese wool, and as Stephanie was explaining to me, one of the cool things about this particular brand of wool yarn is that it is a sock yarn, but it doesn't have any nylon in it. And there's been a lot of discussion. I'm trying not to do just show and tell. I'm trying to like do a little like, let's talk about what's going on in yarn world kind of thing. There's been a lot of discussion about whether or not your sock yarn really needs nylon or not. Some people think that nylon actually cuts into the life of socks because it can actually act harshly against the wool and act as a kind of cause a certain kind of friction that might lead to holes in the wool. So a lot of people that I've been reading blogs and whatnot and recommend just using 100% wool for your socks. And this is Portuguese wool, so I'm not sure. I want to look up and see what the blend might be out of it. I'm not positive, but I do love the colorway of this. And I'm kind of curious to see how it knits up, not only because of the colorway, but because I'm curious to see how it wears. So I think I'll just have to knit a pair of socks out of this and let you guys know. If anybody else has input on the debate of whether or not to use nylon mixed with your wool for sock yarn, I'd love to hear about it. And to add to that kind of question, like what do we think about using the down breeds that are just natural wool for things like socks? They're supposed to be more machine washable, a little less felty, feltable. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on all those kinds of sock yarn questions. But so this is 100% beautiful wool from Portugal. How could you resist, right? And then the only other thing I picked up, well, a few things that I wanted to show you that are kind of funky. Remember I mentioned that tapestry needle issue before? Well, I bought these. Let me show them. These are from Knit Pro. And I think you can see, yeah. They're tapestry needles with this really interesting nylon eye. So, and they're made out of aluminum. So I'm gonna weave in all my ends with these and see how it goes, and I'll let you know what the verdict is on this kind of tapestry needle, because I'm really curious to use it. I've never seen it before in the States, and I feel like I look around quite a bit, but I haven't seen these before, so I'm very curious about them. The other thing I picked up is something that I've been looking for quite some time and looking at, but didn't want to purchase them just online without having seen them. So these, I love Addi needles, as I told you in the very beginning of this. These are a new kind of Addi needle that it's 3 needles and they're flexible. And the idea is, you know, there are all kinds of different sock needles and all kinds of different people who use sock needles in different kinds of ways. So I used to be a DPN sock needle knitter. I've since switched over to kind of magic loop some of the time. It took me a little bit. And there are also those really tiny needles that are they really are like this size. They have these small points at the end, and people knit with them like this. And I can't do that because I hold my needles with the backs, like my pinkies, as I'm kind of knitting, and I think that's what makes me a tight knitter. And so I can't do those needles because I don't knit like this. But I've seen some folks in my guild, Christy knits with those, and I think Beth knits with them, and they both like them very much. So I think it's really like up to what you actually like as a knitter and what you're comfortable with. But this is a new kind of circular slash sock knitting, cuff knitting kind of needles. So there are 3 that come in each pack. And I do believe that the idea is you would have your, well, put this one here, you would have your circular action on the needles yay way. And then as you went to knit, you use your 3rd needle to come in and knit all the way down on this one. And it's supposed to be ergonomically really fun. It's supposed to look like this. Yeah. So I will get to work on that and let you know what I think about these new, they're called Addy Crasy Trio. And I don't know what that is, but this is what they are. And I do like them, and I've been very excited to try them. This is the 3mm version, which is US size 2. That's pretty standard for my socks. I like to use a 2. But they did have 2mm in the shop as well, and that's more of a size 0. I don't quite go that small with my sock yarn needles, so I opted for the 3mm needles, so I'll let you know. And the last thing, for those of you who have been following along and know about Tink, Tink is, sorry about the noise, Tink is going to be 7 months old at the end of March, and so she's almost grown into a full pup, and I've been waiting for her to be full grown before I make her a doggy sweater, because we had a coat on her this winter when she was a puppy, but she just pretty much outgrew it, like at every stage, like pretty fast. So I wanted to wait to knit her a really good dog sweater for these cold winters, especially when we're in New York, etc., until she's more full grown and like actually her full body size, right? And so I've been planning it and thinking about it, and I think I'm going to go with a dog sweater that has 2 closures, so one kind of around the chest and one around the stomach. And so I thought for those closures, you can either use like Velcro or snaps or zippers, or I mean, people do all kinds of weird things with dog sweaters, but I want to just do buttons. And at the at the Woolen Berlin yarn shop, they had the cutest dog buttons. I'm going to show them to you now, and it may break your screen because they're so cute. This is going to be the button for Tink's sweater. I think it's adorable. So I got 4 of them, and I was thinking 2 kind of on the chest piece and 2 on the stomach. And I'm really excited because she's almost big enough for me to make her a sweater to put those buttons on. So that was pretty much my yarn adventure in Berlin in a nutshell, and I so enjoyed meeting Stephanie. So by the way, if I'm ever anywhere, and I'll try to tell you guys where I'm going, but if I'm ever anywhere and you're around, I'd absolutely love to meet you guys. It's fun to get to know you. I was talking to Stephanie, I was like, okay, you know a lot more about me than I know about you. Like, what do you do? Where do you live? Like, what's your thing? Like, show me your Ravelry projects. And she had her iPad, and so we were able to look at some of her Ravelry projects. She had this beautiful scarf mitten hat set that she was wearing, and she had just great recommendations for the yarn as the kind of local connoisseur. So that was awesome, and I do hope to meet more of you guys out there in the future. So just hit me up, let me know what's up. The last thing, is it the last thing that we have today? Because I don't have my whips. I don't have my Kefren Pritchett sand shawl, which is absolutely gorgeous, stunning, in this Madeline Tosh I'm working on. I couldn't bring it because I'm knitting on metal needles, and in the US you can't get on a plane with metal needles. Next time. I also have a trash bag full of yarn that I have to show you guys. It's at home. You know, these are the things that happen when you travel. But I thought a podcast was in order no matter what. But the last thing I do have for you guys is the winner of the giveaway for the Bags by Awesome Granny project bag set. And Darlene was kind enough to donate not only a large project bag with a beautiful firefly pattern on it, but also a smaller kind of notions bag. So that whole set is going to go to, let's see who the winner was. Nettie, Netty 0621, and she left a YouTube comment about the bag. And so Nettie, why don't you get in touch with me and let me know how to get this bag set to you, and I'll be really happy to do so. We had almost 100 entries on that giveaway, and I was so happy to read through all of the projects that you guys are working on. So much variety, from shawls to sweaters, blankets, oh my gosh, mittens, hats, you ran the whole gamut, and it was really fun to see this list of projects just kind of like whirring out of my computer on YouTube and on Ravelry. Lots of good suggestions. So if you run out of knitting mojo somehow, you should go check out that list of possible projects to throw in that bag, because they're just great, and I think they all sound really terrific. So thank you all for entering the giveaway. I will let you know when I have another one. And I can't wait to see you guys once I'm back in Urbana. For those of you who didn't catch it, just a reminder that the next Better Sweater video is up. And in that one I talk about yarn gauge and measurement, body measurement, swatch measurement, sweater math, all the good stuff. So go check that one out, and I will have another Better Sweater video for you in a couple weeks. Okay, for now, I'm signing off from Berlin. It was lovely to spend a little bit of time with you guys. I'm going to go for a walk, one final walk before the plane, and I will see you guys back in the States. Take care, everybody.